Second to last line, 55b. Last two words of the second to last line. So, I'm sure we all remember from 24 hours ago that we mentioned that the Azara, which is the courtyard, is big, and by the courtyard there is the ulam, which is the antechamber, and then after that is the heichal, which is the holy area. So, and then there's these chambers. There's different chambers that were there. One is called the chamber of knives. It's placed, and those chambers, at least the chamber of knives, let's say, had openings into the courtyard. Those openings are very significant because you have to slaughter offerings when there's an opening, only corresponding to an opening. So those openings enabled one to slaughter. So on that topic, we're going to talk about what about other areas, other halachas like impurity. Amar Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, Ein Chayavin Mishum Tuma. The only time when you're going to be liable for walking in a state of impurity, Ella al Orech, next page, Meya Ushmonim V'Sheva, in the area that's 187, al Rochev Meya Ushloshim V'Chamish, by 135. So meaning the length is 187, by the width is 135. So that comes to exclude the inside of the chambers. So you can have chambers that are going to be opened up into the courtyard. If you come to walk into those areas in a state of impurity, so biblically, you're not, and right now we assume also maybe rabbinically, you're not going to be liable. So only if you go into the area which is 187 by 135. But the chambers that are open to it, those didn't attain, they weren't sanctified in the same way as the Azara, as the courtyard. And therefore, right, impurity and holiness are contradictions. The more holy you are, the more pure you better be. The less holy you are, so the less pure, then you'll be liable even if you're impure. So the chambers were not sanctified in the same way that the courtyard was. So if you'd walk into the chambers in a state of impurity, so then you're not going to be liable. That's what it says. The entire courtyard was 187 by 135. So we have a support for this statement of Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel from a Tanam from Rav Nachman. Good. Amar Le, also Amar Liaba. So a Tana taught this to Rav Nachman, and Rav Nachman said, "My father told me, Kigon Zeh Kohanim Nichnasim L'Sham, V'Ochlen Sham Tachei Kadashim, V'Shochten Sham Kachim Kalim, V'Chayavin Mishum Toma." Yeah, he said in that area called the courtyard, what could you do? Kohanim can go in. They could eat the sacrifices there. They could slaughter sacrifices there. And you're liable for being in a state of impurity. So says the Gemara, okay, what's that coming to exclude? So I a little bit jumped the gun talking about the chambers, but we're going to figure out now. What is it coming to exclude? Lema'ute mai. So ilim le'ute chalonos, blasos, ve'ovei achoma. Maybe it's coming to exclude windows, the doors, and the thickness of the walls. Maybe in those areas, if you go in, so then you're not able to, then you won't be liable for being in a state of impurity. Only the actual courtyard, but not the windows and the doors and the thickness of the walls. So says the Gemara that can't be because Tanina in Psachim it says, Hachalonos ovei kilifnim. The windows and the thickness of the walls have the same sanctity as what's inside of them, right? So, okay, we're not walking through this window, but you can imagine a window that opens up to an inside. That area in the window itself is going to have the sanctity as that which it opens up to. And therefore, if you're found in that area, you're also going to be in a state of impurity. You are going to be liable. The Ella Lemeute Lishkos. Maybe you'll say it's coming to exclude. Lishkos is the chamber. The chambers. You go into the chambers in a state of impurity, and you're good to go. So says the Gemara, well, it depends. The Ibenuyos B'chol Upsuchos L'Kodesh, where are they built? If they're built in a non-sanctified area, but they open up into a sanctified area, so then B'Hatnan Tochan Kodesh. We taught in a Mishnah that their inside is Kodesh. So even though they're built in a mundane area, however, that which they open up, because they open up into holiness, they themselves, the inner parts, are going to maintain a level of holiness also, and therefore you're going to be liable. So when we said that you're only liable for impurity if you're in the area of 187 by 135, what are you coming to exclude? Windows and doors? No. Chambers that open up into holiness? No. So what else is there? You covered everything. Okay. There's the Gemara. No. That's only midirabbanan. These chambers that open up into a holy area, the mission that says that the inside of them are holy, that was rabbinic. Biblically, though, they don't have that status of holiness, and therefore, if you walk in a state of impurity, then biblically you're not going to be liable. Yeah. There's no kares, there's no korban. Says the Gemara, is that really true? V'daraisa lo, v'hatanya lishchos benuyos b'chol upsuchos l'kodesh, chambers that are built in a mundane area but open up into a holy area. Minayin shekohanim nichnasim l'sham v'ochlen sham kacha kadashim v'shiyari mincha. How do you know that when a Kohen goes into those areas, he can eat the sanctified offerings there and the remainders of the mincha offering? Now, if you can eat there, it means it has a level of holiness. So it's another way of saying, how do you know that it has a level of holiness? Because from the fact that you can eat your holy offerings there, it means it was sanctified with the level of holiness. And if that's true, then you can't walk in when you're impure because they go together. Says the Gemara, Talmud Lomar. It says there in Vayikra, in the 6th chapter, it says, B'chatzer ohel mohed yochluhu. So it sounds like it repeats numerous times where you could eat it. Why does it do that? HaTorah ripsa chatzeros harbe etzel achilachas. The Torah included many places to eat for one eating, meaning you can eat the offerings in a number of places. So in the area corresponding to the tent of meeting is one place, but the repetition of the Torah includes even places that are built in a mundane area, but open up into a sanctified area. Yeah. So that sounds like biblically, since you could eat the sacrifice there, it has a level of holiness that is biblical, not rabbinic. So on that we say, Amarava, la'achila shiny. Says, whoa, you made one big assumption. You're comparing eating to impurity. Who says that eating, good morning, hello? Who says that eating and impurity have the same laws? Now, logically, they would have the same laws. No, because if you have to eat in a holy place and you can't walk in impure to a holy place, so it made a lot of sense. The place that you could eat, you can't walk in impure. That would make sense. However, Rava says, no, la'achila shiny, aval inyan tumalo, meaning that eating there might be a problem, but it doesn't say that you can't walk in impure. It's a special law, a special repetition came to include only eating, meaning when the Torah repeated itself and included these places, there's two ways you can understand the inclusion. One way is when it includes it, it included it for all levels of sanctity. Not only the area of the courtyard, but even the outer areas all also have a high level of sanctity. Or you could say, no, they never got that level of sanctity. They were just included for eating, special dispensation for eating, but not for everything else. So that's what Rav is saying. Those outer areas, these chambers that open up into a holy area, they're only you're permitted to eat there. It was a novelty that you could eat there, but it doesn't mean it has a full sanctity, and therefore you're not liable for walking in impure. Yeah. Says the Gemara, let's see if that's true. The Hatanya, lishchos habnuyos l'chol, chambers that are built in a mundane area, upsuchos l'kodesh, and they're open up to a holy area. So what's the halacha? Says the brisa. Kohanim nichnasim l'sham, v'ochlin sham. Kohanim can enter there and they can eat their kachne kadashim, their holy sacrifices. The ein shochtin sham, kachim kalim. They can't slaughter their sacrifices there. The kachim kalim, lesser sanctity sacrifices. V'chayavin mishum tuma. Oh, and you're liable if you walk in for tuma. So clearly the brisa says that if you go into these areas that were built, their foundation was in a mundane area, but they open up into a holy area, clearly they have a level of sanctity because you can eat there and you're liable for tumah. So you see that you are liable for tumah. So says the Gemara, Lav Amris Ein Shochtin. Says the Gemara, well, it says that you can't slaughter there. If you can't slaughter there, it's because it does not have a level of sanctity. If that's true, then what should you teach? So Taninami Ein Chayavin. You should also teach that you're not liable for tumah. But you didn't do that. You somehow split. You told me that you cannot slaughter there, and you told me that you are liable for tumah. If it's really true that they don't have a high level of sanctity, you should be consistent and teach Ein Chayavin that you're not liable for tumah, for walking in a state of impurity. So clearly we see that they do have a level of sanctity. You are liable if you walk in a state of impurity. Says the Gemara, well, not so fast. Why? Maybe you'll say that the reason why you can't slaughter there is because be'ina keneged a pesach v'leka. There has to be some kind of opening that opens up to you to enable you to slaughter there, and that you don't have. So in all of these things that are built in the built and open up, not all of them will open up into the courtyard and give it sanctity and enable you to then slaughter. So Ella ein chayav amai. Why are you not liable for tumah? That doesn't make sense. Meaning shachting, I understand you have to be corresponding to an entrance, fine. But why are you not liable for tumah? That doesn't make sense. So it says the Gemara, hold on. One second. Why can't you slaughter? Milo askinan de ika shchita keneged pesach. Are we not talking about a case where there is an opening? I mean, there's some case that has an opening. So I think from yesterday's maps where you have a chamber of knives, I think it was, I don't remember, A or something. It was A. So the chamber of knives was sort of behind, I guess, to the northwest, east to west. Yeah, northwest. It was northwest, and that opened up into the Azar, and that was our little chamber that had two openings, right? That one was open to the I think behind the north, and one was open to the courtyard. So, are we not also talking about that chamber? That chamber does, I think, the chamber of knives, store knives there. That chamber does open up into the Azara. And yet we say, according to this price, that you can't slaughter there. So we are talking about places that open up into the Azara. So what are you going to say? The Ileka Lemai Itrech. If we're not talking about any of the chambers that open up directly into the courtyard, so then Lemai Itrech. What's the novelty of the brisa? Obviously, you can't slaughter there. Ella, what do you have to say? Obviously, we're talking about cases that even though they open up into the courtyard, however, since they're built in a place that's mundane, they're not going to attain a level of holiness. Therefore, you cannot slaughter there, and that's why it says, and that's why you can't slaughter there. Well, if that's true, then Taninami ein chayavin. You should have also taught that you're not liable for any tumah, and yet you didn't teach that. You somehow split. You told me that you can't slaughter there, but the brisa said that you're liable for tumah. So, if it's really true that the reason why you cannot slaughter is because even though it opens up into a holy area, it doesn't have sanctity. If that's true, then you should have taught ein chayavin for tumah. You're not liable if you walk in a state of impurity. And yet, what did the brisa teach? The brisa taught that you are liable for a state of impurity. So clearly, according to this brisa, those areas do have a level of sanctity, and a person would be liable. If they walk in there in a state of impurity. One second. Yeah, so it's interesting. It sounds like I'm not exactly sure what's the final conclusion. We started off today that 187 by 135 of the courtyard has a level of sanctity, coming to exclude what? Coming to exclude these chambers. And we said that those chambers are only rabbinically impure, but not biblically impure. But then we had this brisa that clearly attacked it, to which Rava ended up answering, no, it's only for eating, but not for impurity. And then this brisa seems to be an anomaly. The brisa says you can't slaughter, but you are liable. So I don't know what we do with this brisa. Rava ended up saying that really the areas, the chambers that open up do not have a level of sanctity biblically. And if you walk in there in a state of impurity, you're not liable. The brisa comes to attack Rava, and yeah. So maybe the conclusion that the brisa itself doesn't make so much sense, because if you can't slaughter there because it's not holy, then you should really teach the brisa that you're not liable for tumah. The fact that it taught you're liable for tumah doesn't make any logical sense. So maybe this brisa ends up being its own difficulty, and we can't bring a proof against us. But at the end of the day, our 3-4 statements that we start off today with do remain, that the only area that you're liable to walk in with a state of impurity is the area of 187 by 135, coming to exclude chambers that were built in a mundane area but open up into a holy area. Even though they open up into a holy area, but if you walk in there in a state of impurity, you're not going to be liable. At least biblically, you're not going to be liable. Sounds like rabbinically you shouldn't do it, but biblically there's no korban, no kares. Yeah. Okay. Now, we mentioned yesterday and today, you have to slaughter, you have to eat in an area that corresponds to an opening. You have these chambers that open up into the courtyard that allow you to eat, that allow you to eat there. Allow you to shech there. Says the Gemara, Ula achila lo ba'inan keneged Pesach. Says, for eating, you don't need to eat keneged Pesach. The Hatanya, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Shnei Pishpashin Hayu B'Beisach Halipos. Back to our chamber of knives. There were 2 doors that were there. Govan, Shmona, they were each 8 amos tall. Kidei lahachshir es hazara, la'achilas kachei kadashim, to enable you to eat the holy sacrifices. Ulishchitas kachei kalim, and to slaughter the kachim kalim. So Omer Ravina, Sami mikan achila. For eating, you don't have to have an opening, only for the slaughtering. Therefore, the brisa is erroneous, and you have to remove from their achila. I have a haksiv bishlu as a basar pesach ol moed v'sham tochlu also. It says clearly in the Torah that by the inauguration of the temple, you would not only slaughter it corresponding to the entrance to the tent of meeting, v'sham tochlu also. There you're going to eat it. Sounds like you have to eat it corresponding to the tent of meeting. Says the Gemara, you're right. However, Kachei Sha'a Shiny, sacrifices that were brought for the inauguration of the temple were temporary. It was one time in history. You can't bring a proof from there for sacrifices that are forever. So just because one time when they had to inaugurate the temple, they did it, but that's not a proof that we have to do that. Okay. So that's basically that section. Next section. Amr Rabbi Yitzchak bar Avdumi. Minayin lidam shenifsal b'shkia sachama. So if blood, because this is also mentioned, it was mentioned in the Mishnah. No, no. Blood that's left over past shkia is invalid. How do you know? Meaning you can't use that blood the next day. How do you know? Shenemar, it says, it says on the day that you bring the sacrifice, you should eat it. So hikribu, to bring the sacrifice, means to sprinkle the blood, to apply the blood. Biyom she'ata zoveyach hatamakriv. The day that you bring the sacrifice, that you slaughter it, is the day that you bring it. Biyom she'iyata zoveyach hatamakriv. The day that you do not slaughter it, you cannot bring it. So since you slaughtered it, let's say on a Monday, on that day you have to go bring it. On a day that you didn't slaughter it, such as a Tuesday, because it's already slaughtered, there you cannot bring the blood. Yeah. So that's why you can't leave let's see when I slaughter the animal, and I'll take care of the blood tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll throw you. It's getting late already. Go back that time. So the answer is no. Skip that time and do the blood. What did you say?
My unit.
Exactly. So that would be the source that you cannot apply the blood the next day. Says the Gemara, hold on, turn the page. Don't you need this verse by the Shlomim to teach you it itself that you have 2 days to eat the Shlomim? You can eat the Shlomim the next day. It says, B'yomi kribas zivcho ye'achel umi macharas. You can eat it that day and the next day. So maybe you just need the verse for itself to teach you that you have 2 days to eat the Shlomim. Says the Gemara, if that's true, name a krab yom zivcho ye'achel hikrivu lamali. So we'll just say on that day you can eat it on the next day. Why does it add in the word hikrivu? And you should bring it. Lamali shmamina, to teach you yom shata zoveach atamakriv yom shata zoveach atamakriv. The day that you slaughter is the day that you bring. The day that you don't slaughter is the day that you don't bring. Says the Gemara, not so fast. Maybe even if you have the word hikrivu, you still can read it in a different way, and therefore you don't have a proof. How would you read it in a different way? The dilma haki kamarachmana. This is what the Torah said. Ikariv dam ha'idna nisachel basar ha'idna ulamachar. If you bring the blood today, you can eat the sacrifice today and tomorrow. Ikariv dam lamachar. But maybe if you bring the blood tomorrow, so then this achel basar lamachar uliyoma ochra. Maybe all the verse is saying is that whenever you bring the blood, you have 2 days to eat the offering. If you bring the blood on day 1, you have day 1 and day 2. If you bring the blood on day 2, you have day 2 and day 3. But then you wouldn't know that you cannot bring the blood the next day after it was the animal was slaughtered. Im kain name a krab yom hekribu ye'achel, and it should say that the day that you bring the sacrifice, meaning you apply the blood, that day you should eat, and then the next day. Zivchol amali. Why did it add in the word slaughtering? If that's all the verse wants to teach you is that you have 2 days from when you apply the blood, then the slaughtering is irrelevant. Why does it mention slaughtering? Shmamina, to teach you. Yom shetazavech atamakrivo, yom shetazavech iatamakrivo. The day that you slaughter is the day that you have to bring the blood. And the day that you don't slaughter, meaning the next day, is the day that you cannot bring the blood. Now, here's the interesting thing. We know already, we're pigel experts, that you cannot have the wrong intention to consume, to consume the offering after the right time. So now, what about when you have in mind? Yeah, so 1 second. Yeah, so the Shlomim offering, right? So let's say on Monday morning you slaughter the offering. So you have, and you bring the offering on Monday. You have the rest of Monday to eat the Shlomim and the rest of Tuesday. Once nightfall comes on Tuesday, no more eating offering. However, it's not considered nosa, left over, until Wednesday morning. It's not considered left over until Wednesday morning. So you have this period of time after sundown on Tuesday night where you're not allowed to eat it, but you don't have to burn it either. You can't eat it, but you don't have to burn it. So that period of time, so is that considered a wrong time? Well, it depends. If it all depends on your eating, so then yeah, if you have that intention in mind, then you're done. If it depends on when does the Torah want you to burn it, that's already the latest stage. So then if you have in mind for that night, that's not going to invalidate the offering because it's still officially kosher. Technicality, you can't eat it for whatever reason, but it's still considered a good shlamim. So that's going to be the following debate. Itmar hamechashev leor shlishi, even though or means light, but it's used to mean the nighttime. That's the first 2 or 3 daf of Pesachim. The beginning of Pesachim says or le'arba asar. When do we check for chametz? In the nighttime. What does the Mishnah say? Do it to the light of the 14th. Doesn't say nighttime, it says light. So the Gemara goes through why exactly it calls nighttime or, brings proofs back and forth. But yeah. Or a positive language. Or shlishi. So that night of the 3rd day, so meaning Monday is day 1, Tuesday is day 2, Wednesday is day 3. So the night of the 3rd day means the night before the 3rd day. So Tuesday night. So you started on Monday, Tuesday night. You have in mind to consume the offering Tuesday night. What's the halacha? Chizkiya Amar Kasher and Rabbi Yochanan Amar Pasul. Obviously, a debate. Chizkiya says it's good, and Rabbi Yochanan said no good. Chizkiya Amar Kasher. Chizkiya says it's good. Why the hollow intik l'sreifa? It does not have to be intik to be connected to sreifa. It doesn't have to be bound to sreifa. You don't have to burn it yet at 9 p.m. on Tuesday night. You have until the morning. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Pasul, but it's pushed away from eating. I can't eat it. So, therefore, it is going to invalidate the offering. Now, what happens if you actually eat it Tuesday night? So you're not supposed to eat it Tuesday night. What happens if you do? So, ha'ochel or shlishi, chizkiya, consistently, amar pater. Why? You shouldn't do it. If you do it, you're exempt from the violation of eating an offering past its time, because you haven't. It's not yet the time to burn it. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Chayev. Why? Because you cannot eat it anymore. So the fundamental debate: Chizkiya and Rabbi Yochanan. At what point do we invalidate this offering? When it's no longer time for eating it, or when you have to burn it? These 2 stages. Which one do we view as the primary stage? Chizkiya against Rabbi Yochanan. So now, Tanya Kivase, Rabbi Yochanan. We're going to have a nice support for Rabbi Yochanan. I don't think we're going to have support for Chizkiya. Tanya Kivase, Rabbi Yochanan. Sacrifices that can be eaten in one day, so meaning the Kachay Kadashim and not the Kachim Kalim. The holier sacrifices have only one day. So, Mechashvin Bidaman, Misha Tishke Achama. If you have in mind, right, you can have in mind for their blood to be consumed after Shkia. Ube Besaran, Ube Emurei, and Mishyalam Mudashakar. And you can have in mind for their meat to be consumed in the sacrificial parts up until Amud Shachar. But the lesser sanctity offerings, you have 2 days to consume, and 1 night. You can have in mind to consume their blood even after Shkiyo, and the sacrificial parts from you can even do it from dawn. And their meat to be consumed, you could still have in mind to consume the meat even after Shkia of day 2. Even after Shkia of day 2, that's what's appropriate for Yochanan. Even if you have it in mind. Sorry, 1 second. Sorry, up until that point. Yeah, sorry, up until that point. Up until Shkia, after day 2, you can have in mind for the offering. Up until Amud Shachar, up until Shkia, you can have in mind. After that, it's going to be invalid. That's Rabbi Yochanan. You can have in mind up until sunset after day 2. If you have in mind to put the blood on or to consume the meat, in this case, to consume the meat after day 2, then that's going to be invalid. Yeah. Yeah, really, this Bryce is telling you not when it's permitted to do it, when it's actually going to be pickle. So, meaning when the Bryce has said, just back for a second, it's referring to pickle. If you have in mind for the blood to be put on the altar after Shkia, or the meat and the sacrificial parts after dawn, that's all going to render it pickle. And at the end, It says if you're going to consume the meat after Shkia, that's going to be a problem. So the Brisa is full of invalidations. It doesn't speak out what it's talking about exactly, but Rashi fills us in. It's talking about invalidations. And therefore, it says clearly, if you eat the meat after Shkia, after day 2, that's going to be invalid. That's a direct support for Rabbi Yochanan. Okay. So according to Rabbi Yochanan, it's invalid. What happens to you? Whatever the punishment is for eating it off. That's interesting. What punishment is there according to Rabbi Yochanan? Because it's not nosar yet, because you have to burn it. I assume you wouldn't get the nosar punishment because that much it's not. That's a good question. What exactly is the punishment? If you have in mind, it's pickle, but there's two things. There's having it in mind, and then there is now, it was sunset, you eat it. You eat the shlomim an hour after sunset. Yes, what happens after you eat it? So it's not yet nosar officially because you don't have to burn it. On the other hand, you're not allowed to eat it. That's a question. Look up Rabbi Yochanan and see what the punishment is. Yeah, good question, Joseph. So Tana Rabbanan Yachol Yunech Chalin L'Or Shlishi. So you would have thought that maybe you actually could eat the shlomim the night after the second day, the eve of the third day. Now, why would you have thought that? Bedinhu. Well, let's think about it. Zbachim ne'echon liyom echad. Sacrifices ne'echon liyom echad. The zbachim ne'echon l'shnei yomim. The sacrifices of higher sanctity are eaten for one day, and of lower sanctity are eaten for 2 days. Ma zbachim ha'ne'echalin liyom echad. Just like sacrifices that are eaten for one day, what happens? A regular chatas. You have the night afterwards to eat it. So too, you should compare. Just like by a regular sacrifice, you have 1 day to eat. You can eat it in the daytime, and the night follows. You can eat it that night also. You have 1 day and 1 night. So you would have thought that the same should apply by lower sanctity sacrifices. You have 2 days, and the night follows. That's what you would have thought. Talmud Lomar, v'hanosar ad yom. That it's nosar ad yom, but odi yom hu ne'echal, when it's still daytime, you eat it, ve'eno ne'echal le'or shlishi. You eat it when it's still day, and you cannot eat it anymore when it's the eve of the third day. You have to have a special pasuk telling you that you cannot eat it the night after the second day. You would have thought, yachol yisarich miyad. Well, what's the middle ground then? If it's past its time, burn it right now. Right? According to Rabbi Yochanan, what's his middle ground? You can't eat it after Shkia, but you don't have to burn it till the morning. So logically, you would have thought, according to this opinion, you should burn it right away. The second you can't eat it, you got to burn it. V'dinhu, and that would make logical sense. Why? Zbachim ne'echalin liyom echad, v'zbachim ne'echalin l'shnei yomim. Sacrifices of a higher sanctity that are eaten for 1 day, and there are sacrifices that have a lower sanctity that are consumed in 2 days. Now let's compare them. Just like sacrifices that are eaten for 1 day, what immediately follows? Burning it. So you would have thought, so do sacrifices that are eaten for 2 days, you would have thought, just like the other sacrifices, you should burn it right away. Right, immediately following the eating it, the prohibition that you cannot eat it, should come burning it. Talmud Lomar, the Yom Shlishi, the Eishisari. On the third day, a fire shall consume it. On the third day, B'Yom Tasurfo, B'Yet Tasurfo B'Layla. On the daytime, special requirement to burn it in the daytime and not in the nighttime. Say again? What is that? Yeah.
They can be eaten the day and the night.
Yeah, so Monday morning you slaughter it, you have the rest of Monday day and Monday night.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay. So right. Your burning is still in the day. If you don't finish it by morning, you burn it immediately, but that's already dead. So you don't burn it.
Correct. Same as that.
The same as this.
Yeah,
so
good.
that's why you hold over the night. So you don't burn.
Good. Yeah, I mean the requirement for burn is always going to be the daytime. Right. Right. Yeah. Correct. Yeah, very good. Yeah. By the way, our my Pesach time, not so foreign to us. We have to try at least to finish by chatzos. These things, where does that come from? It comes from the times you have to eat the korban Pesach, the patterning, and after that. So it might be a little bit different. There's two opinions, I think, in brachos, but yeah. Okay. So I think a good review of this chapter is to go through all the Mishnah. It's just like it summarizes the halachas, all the kachim kadosh, kachim kalim. I think this is the last. We're not gonna do that right now. Just for if you can't fall asleep tonight and you want something to do.
Instead of counting sheep.
That's exactly. This guy. Very good, Charles. That was for you. So very good, very good. So now, habechor v'hamaiser v'hapesach kachim kalim, the firstborn and the 10th animal, the meiser, v'hapesach and the korban pesach are kachim kalim. So they can be shechted anywhere in the courtyard. As we know, 187 by 135, as we learned today. Now, interestingly, their application, one application, not two, that's four, one application. Ubilvad, as long as it has to be on the wall corresponding to the area where you have a base. So here it goes on the wall, but it has to be in an area where there is a base there. So we're going to be excluding the southeast corner. There is no base there, so that wall is going to be excluded. Yeah. 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 Now, yeah. However, Shina Bachilasan, they differ in when you can consume them. They have different laws in terms of that. Let's see. Habechor, the firstborn, Nachal leKohanim, it can be eaten for Kohanim. The Hamaiser, though, the Meiser animal, the 10th animal, L'chol Adam, any person. V'nachalin b'chol ha'ir, and they can eat it anywhere in the city. B'chol Michael, right? Always as opposed to the korban Pesach, you can eat it any way you want. You don't have to roast it. And what do you have? L'shnei yamim v'layla echad. So the Bechor and the Meiser, you have 2 days and 1 night, like a regular shlamim. However, Pesach, eino nechel ela b'layla. Now you only have that night. The eino nechel ela ad chatzos. Oh, perfect. There we go. You can only eat it until chatzos, the korban Pesach. The eino nechel ela lemnuya, and you can only eat it for people that are literally, it means appointed people. Right? The korban Pesach was unique that they had chaburas, groups of people, and each group together would be numbered. You 15 to here, you 10 to here. Only if you're part of that numbering can you eat the korban Pesach. The eino nechel ela tzali, and you only can eat the korban Pesach if it is roasted. Mantana, who's the author of the Mishnah? Who's the Tana that says that that compares the application of the blood of these 3 offerings? Meaning the eating is different, but it sounds like the blood application is going to be the same for all 3 of these. Who's the author of that? That is Amar Rav Chisda Rabbi Yossi Aglili. Tanya Rabbi Yossi Aglili Omer Chelbel Onemer Ela Chelbam. Their fast. Gamel Onemer, not its blood, but their blood. Ela Damam. Why? Limed Al Bechor Umaiser Upesach Shekeunin Matan Damim VeEmurin Legavim Mizbeach. The reason why it says in the plural by the fats and by the blood to teach you that these 3, the Bechor and the Meiser and the Pesach, they all have the same blood applications, and their sacrificial parts will go onto the altar. I think this is a very good stopping point. Hey, God willing, finish chapter tomorrow. Maybe the next chapter tomorrow. Maybe the whole chapter. No.